There's just nothing on the planet that looks like this.
No.
Hi, I'm Dennis Gage, and welcome to My Classic Car. Well, this week we're in the mountains above Malibu to get a look at a couple of Gary and Diane Cervantes cars. These folks have a lot of cars, and their tastes run the gamut from Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost to vintage drag and Indy cars. But today, we've pulled out a couple that are truly studies in design elegance. The 55 Hudson Italia and the one and only 48 Timbs Special. Now, these babies are completely off the charts from a design standpoint, and I think they're gonna knock your socks off. Hey Gary, how you doing?
Hello, Dennis. Very glad to meet you.
Finally meeting you. Boy, I've heard so much about you and your cars, and here we are, beautiful sunny Southern California day. But boy, you brought out some fabulous cars today. The Timbs Special is like nothing I've ever seen in my life, and I can't wait to learn a little bit more about it. But we also have this Italia over here, which has been a fave of mine always, and I've only seen one other of these in my entire life. There aren't a heck of a lot of them, right?
As we understand, it was originally supposed to be a production run of 26, but there were 6, I believe, brought to the U.S., 5 that are together, 1 that's in pieces. Supposedly, some of the other ones were finished in Turin and were sold to the car company could get their money there because they weren't being paid by Hudson anymore.
Well, so had Hudson gone down in the meantime? I mean, did they?
Yeah, while these were being built in '55 is when Hudson declared bankruptcy right after the first few of these showed up in the U.S.
Well, all of those now orphaned marks, like Kaiser and Nash and Hudson, we're trying these radical things right along towards the end in kind of a last gasp effort to stay alive. I was looking at this, and I love the windshield, I love the wrap on it and everything, and I was looking at the chrome trim embedded there in the weather stripping in the seal, and I look closer, and I mean, is this BX conduit?
Yeah, it sure is. Again, the Italians, were quite creative, so they used electrical conduit, pulled the wire out of it, chrome plated it.
Well, and I also love how the windshield wipers come down. The windshield kicks up right here. They sit right on top of that conduit and above this vent, and again, just the design elements. It's just the Italians. Nobody does it like the Italians do it. What a wild interior. I mean, it's so spacey, so spacey.
Very George Jetson, isn't it?
It is.
And this car is completely original. It's original paint, original interior, original carpet.
The dash is interesting. Is it padded or what is that?
No, it's an aluminum dash, and it was then painted with a crinkle finish.
Elegant steering wheel, just beautiful. But the lettering on the gauges is a little bit Hudson.
Yeah, the gauges may have been from them. They are more pedestrian. But you notice even the surrounds there, though, they did a louvered type of metal. Mm-hmm. Everywhere you look, you'll find just details built into the car.
But these taillights, this rear end is one of the wildest things I've ever seen. That's kind of, I don't know, thruster, jet.
It was obviously the rocket theme, and these are the taillights, turn signals, and backup lights are all built in there.
Well, another thing that's interesting about these cars is how far the body bulges out over the wheels, especially from down low and back. It's like these wheels are way inside the body. It's like the body's all puffed up.
And kind of narrow. I think that comes from the fact that they used their jet chassis, which was their compact car chassis. They probably should have used the bigger chassis, but that would have cost them more, and I think it was probably a price consideration, and they may have had a lot of jets they couldn't get rid of.
So these were all the jet platform, and they were powered by the jet 6-cylinder engine, right?
All of them except for this car.
Really?
This car started that way, but it didn't end up that way.
Well, let's go have a look and see what's in there.
Okay.
Gary, that looks like a Chevy engine.
It's a 265-55 Corvette engine.
Wow, did you do a swap on this?
No, this was done by Hollywood Sports Car. It bolted right up to the bell housing collection transmission. So they just had to put some engine mounts in it, change the electrical because the rest of the car is 6 volt. But the engine, of course, had a 12-volt starter and a 12-volt generator.
And because it's a dealer install, it was legit.
That's the way I look at it.
And like the rest of the car, completely unrestored, unmolested.
Yes. Yep, that's why it's a little tarnished here and there, but I just can't bring myself, it's running so perfectly and with only 12,000 miles on it, I'm just not going to take it apart. I like the patina. I like keeping cars as original as possible.
Now, she runs, and you do drive it, right?
It runs very well. We drive it regularly.
It's like, it's a gorgeous day here in SoCal, and I was wondering if we take it out.
I think we should do that.
You wouldn't mind if I drove it, would you?
Oh, I think you probably should.
Gary, thank you so much. Let's go.
Okay.
So, Gary, this is a really rare car. Were you always looking for an Italia, or how did you come to even know of the Italias?
Well, the first time I saw one was at the Peterson Museum some years ago. We walked in for a dinner, and here was this Italia sitting there. I spent about 20 minutes squatted down looking at it from every angle. And my wife finally had to drag me away, said we're going to miss dinner. And I had the museum director give me the owner's name, and I called him. He gave me a list of all the owners. He didn't want to sell his.
That's a very short list though, right?
5 people, and I wrote them all letters offering to buy their cars. Got no response from anybody. After a few years, one showed up about 40 miles from my house. It was an attorney that I had sent a letter to. I drove over there immediately, paid him for the car, didn't even question anything. Then I said, you know, I wrote you a letter a year or so ago, or a couple years ago. And he says, well, yes, I vaguely remember that. I kind of threw it away. I never planned to sell it. And I said, well, why did you sell it now? And he says, well, I got remarried. My wife said, get that ugly thing out of the garage so I can put my Mercedes in there. So he says, I'm having to sell it.
Well, you know, these are segmenting cars to a certain extent. Some people don't think this is a pretty car. I think it's gorgeous. I always have.
Well, my wife used to think that my Avani was the ugliest car in the world, even though she'd bought it for me for a birthday present. But this car is, according to her, positively the ugliest car in the world. However, it's one of my all-time favorite cars. So it's just a difference of opinion. But you either love it or hate it. There's no middle ground on a car like this.
You aren't wishy-washy or lukewarm on this car. It is a love it or hate it. Now this, and you occasionally drive this car? You take it out or take it out to shows?
We drive it quite frequently.
Do you, eh?
Like say, my wife has to wear 2 A&P paper sacks on her head in case one blows off.
She hasn't gotten over this yet,
because
right?
It's so ugly to her. No, she quite hasn't.
The weird overhead light scoops are really functional, correct?
Those are actual scoops that run to little tubes that run air to the front brakes, and there's also ducts on the side of the car near where the skirts are that run ducts to the rear brakes to essentially cool the brakes. Whether they're all that effective, I'm not so sure. Of course, this is 4-wheel drum brakes.
Yeah.
This car actually is a very practical car to drive, but I don't think the design had anything to do with practicality.
Well, it's got such a Euro interior. I mean, it's beautiful, and it feels you just feel Euro in this car.
Yes, I think that's one of the things that I like about the car so much, is that it is completely different from anything you see today, let alone what you would have seen in 1955.
Well, Gary, that Italia really runs pretty nice. That engine swap, I think, was the right thing to do.
I think it helped.
I've always wanted to drive one of those. They're so unique, but nothing compared to your Timbs Special. I mean, this is unique on steroids. 1947, 48, right?
Yep.
What? By a guy named Timbs, Norman Timbs.
Norman Timbs.
What's the story on him?
Well, he was an aerospace engineer and an IndyCar designer, and he decided he wanted to build a car for himself, and he got a lot of his inspiration, according to his family, from the Auto Union land speed record car from pre-World War II, which was a mid-engine car. Of course, it had a V12, and this is a straight 8 Buick.
It's just, it's unbelievable. And so obviously a one-off, created, by hand, and it's all, is it aluminum?
It's all aluminum body. The body was actually pounded by Emil Dietz,
Wow.
who was an IndyCar body man from that period.
It's interesting from the back, and if you stopped about here, it's almost Auburn Speedster.
A little bit.
But then that goes away with all of this craziness that's going on. And these look like Ford taillights.
Yes, he used some Ford, some Packard parts, and of course the Buick engine and transmission. Everything else, though, was hand fabricated.
It's unbelievable. And the other thing is, huge cars. How long? 16?
17 feet 10 inches.
Pretty darn close to 18 feet. But this really tiny little passenger compartment. I mean, it's only 2 people, and you can't be too big.
No, you're right together. I wish I'd had this in high school. The girls wouldn't have been able to get away from me. They'd have been trapped close.
And very, a lot of instrumentation, engine turn dash, and a gauge for just about everything. All
Yep.
Stewart Warners, or?
They're mostly back mount Stewart Warners with some echo gauges. He even went to the extent that he pressurized the tubes in the chassis for 2 purposes. One, to supposedly make them a little stiffer. Not absolutely sure about that. But also there's a very small electric pump that pumped 110 pounds of pressure into those tubes. and that's what works the air horn.
So that was actually it was his air horn reservoir. His
Exactly.
Chassis was the air horn reservoir.
That way you had a long blast, and I didn't have to worry about running out of
Get
air.
out of my way. This leather around the dash and everything, that was the way it was.
This was the way it was originally done, even this small stitching detail around the front.
And it was stunning.
So-
Steering wheel. Is that
Yeah.
rosewood?
I believe it is. We actually had to fabricate this steering wheel to get it to be exactly right.
And it's a column shift 3-speed.
It is. It uses a Ford column here. Of course, now all the shifting is going on clear at the very front of the car. Then from here on, it's all Norman's parts. They're all rods, bell cranks, Hymans, ball bearing that comes all the way down the body to run both the carburetor and the transmission. And of course, this transmission, unfortunately, not only shifts in this axis, but also in this axis. So these levers have to move both
Very
ways.
complex.
Unbelievable. It's a shame they're covered up, but they're just an unbelievable amount of rods and levers. And then of course, the radiator's in front. So on the other side are the water from the engine and returned back to the engine.
And what a strange nose. I mean, the front end is, again, this is 3/4 aft, and then a quarter of it's up here, drops right down real quick to a...
The grill is very similar to a Seata.
It is, yeah.
But the only thing that's up front here, besides the linkage in the column and the little air pump and the air horns, is the radiator.
Is that metal flake? I mean, you've got a lot of sparkle in the paint there.
No, it's actually real gold.
Real gold, like gold? Real
gold.
Wow.
Norman, one of the things that he did, he wanted to actually spray gold flake, a large flake. No one had ever done that before. Took a Bink spray gun, designed a set of beaters in the cup that were like an old ice cream maker, air driven, so that it could keep real gold in suspension in the paint to paint it. So that's the way he did it.
Well, now, so it's mid-engine. How do you get to it?
Well, you have to lift the entire back up to get to the spare tire, to get to the fuel tank, to change the rear tires, or to service the engine.
That looks like a two-man job.
No, actually, it's a one-finger job.
It's power. And
Yes,
did you
it
guys
is.
do that, or?
No, it was originally that way.
In 48, he put a power lift on this.
That
thing.
is correct.
Let's open her up. And there she is. Wow. And so that's wow. That's a Buick straight 8, right?
It's a Buick Straight 8. It was a 1947 crate engine with the transmission behind it. Now, Norman wanted compound carburation because of his racing pedigrees. They didn't make compound carburation in 47 anymore, but they did make it in 40-41. So Norman got one of the earlier manifolds with the split dual exhaust, installed them on this engine to make a little more horsepower. And then, of course, the exhausts, you notice, come down together, swoop over, and come out here very much like a Duesenberg.
Now, you've done all this work. It does run, right? I mean, you actually created this thing to run.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though we changed and decided to do a full Concours restoration from just making it a driver, I still require all my cars to be driving, and when we're finished showing it, this will be a regular driven car, just like the Hudson.
Wow, but she runs today, she runs now.
Absolutely.
You know, we took out the Italia, it was a lot of fun. Maybe we should take this one out.
Maybe.
You know, I could maybe drive this one too, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. You're going to have to talk to me a little bit on that one. That might take a little more
Let's chat
talking.
about it. Let's put this down, we'll chat.
Okay.
Contact.
Contact.
And she starts. What a feel. What an amazing feel. There's just nothing on the planet that looks like this.
No. It's kind of become, our favorite car and become the gem of our collection.
And this was created in 48?
He started in 47.
Did it create a stir back then? Or, I mean,
It seemed to by the articles that were written amongst car people and amongst race car people. It was the cover of Road and Track in 49.
Wow, do you have that issue?
We have that issue.
Oh, that had
A few copies of it. That was actually the second issue. That was right at the very beginning.
Second issue of Road and Track?
Yeah. It was a cover car.
What
Not much of an article, but it was a cover.
What a cover, though. What a cover car for your second issue. How was his documentation on this? I mean, did he document the creation of this?
Yes. Fortunately, his son is still alive in Central California, and he had his father's original picture book, 140 photographs of the original car, and he was nice enough to allow us to use that book so that we could do an accurate and honest restoration. to say by now you probably noticed he never put a rearview mirror in it.
Yeah, I
either.
did. I know. I noticed that
So
earlier.
I guess he went by the Italian saying, "What's the behind you does not matter."
It doesn't matter.
So,
we don't care. And it was probably completely a design consideration. I mean,
Right, and of course, obviously no windshield wipers, no top. All those things were unnecessary for a true sports car in Southern California. Wouldn't have worked too well in Michigan.
No, no. That's a serious honk there.
Yeah.
So until our next meeting, remember, honor the timeless classics. I'm Dennis Gage. Happy motoring.